And joining me now on this segment of Democracy 2014 is a familiar face to our audience, Candice Miller. She is the Republican representative from Michigan's 10th Congressional District. And thank you for coming in.
Thanks, Chuck. Delighted to be here.
You have done 6 terms in Congress, want to go back for 2 more years. I think a lot of people out there will say, what is it you want to do if you go back that you haven't been able to do already? What would be the top of your to-do list?
Well, the very top thing actually would be tax reform, comprehensive tax reform. And it's something we've not been able to get done. And I think something that most economists agree that's something that would absolutely turbocharge our economy. I've heard it say that the tax code as it's evolved is twice as long as the Bible without any of the good news. There's a choking grain of truth to that, yes. So that I think would be a tremendous opportunity for our nation to really position itself very well globally, as well as for the average person to be able to simply fill out their tax returns. So making it the tax code simpler and fairer. And of course, my other principal advocacies have always been protecting our magnificent Great Lakes, certainly having a strong national defense and protecting the homeland, as well as I have a huge agricultural district, and so we were able to pass a farm bill, and we'd like to improve on some of our farming policies, make sure we can continue to feed the world.
On the Great Lakes, if you could do one particular thing that you think would protect Michigan in a time in which some of those Southwest states may very well look at us one day and say, let's run that pipeline all the way through so we can have some of that water shared with us. And next thing you know, the Great Lakes aren't quite as great as we always say they are. What would it be?
Well, as you're right, it's 20% of the freshwater drinking supply of the entire planet, right out our porches here with the Great Lakes. And so we actually have a compact now with the Great Lakes states, something that has recently happened, which is very, very important, that will protect our Great Lakes from being taken off, sipped on by other parts of the country or the world, quite frankly. But another big threat to the Great Lakes in the immediacy is the Asian carp. This invasive species has the potential to come into the Great Lakes and dramatically, in a negative way, impact our fisheries. And so I've introduced a piece of legislation that would call for a complete separation, a hydrological separation of the basins, of the Great Lakes basins from the Mississippi River basin. And I've gotten quite a bit of support. I've also gotten a lot of pushback. So we need to continue to educate other parts of the country about what the Asian carp and an invasive species like that has potentially the impact to do to our Great Lakes.
Congresswoman, you have a lot of expertise in the Homeland Security area, and you're the only woman that's chair of a committee in the House. With the Ebola scare and so many other things right on our doorstep, what is it that you feel needs to be done to protect the people of this country without putting a fence up around everywhere?
Yes, well, you can't put a fence around the entire country. However, we are an interconnected world anymore. So in regards to the Ebola situation, of course, we have taken the lead, myself and the Homeland Security Committee, on trying to get a temporary suspension of the visas from the 3 countries that are impacted so that these travelers could not come into the United States until we get our arms around this situation. But in particular, looking at border security, really, we have to make sure that we secure our borders. And so we have ratcheted up the amount of Customs and Border Protection officers that we are putting at the southern border as well as the northern border. There's going to be more personnel at the Ambassador Bridge, at the Windsor Tunnel, at the Blue Water Bridge. Looking at our northern border security as well is very, very important. And I think other issues like immigration reform or others really we can't have that debate until the American people feel very confident that our borders are secure.
A recent NBC News poll gave Congress its lowest rating ever. 83% of the people believe that Congress is not doing the job they sent them to do. That would include you.
Yes, it would.
As part of that body, maybe not individually, but certainly as part of that body. How do you change the perception that the American people have of the United States Congress?
You know, I do think that there is a lot of partisan gridlock that's happening. I think there's a lot of different ideology that is on exhibit and manifesting itself in the United States Congress. However, I think the country is a bit polarized as well. And I think, now let me put my partisan hat on here. I do believe there will be a change in the United States Senate in the majority this election. And then I think you're going to see things really start to work. I personally believe that. In the House, we have passed over 300 bills that have gone to a death in the Senate that have not been taken up, all kinds of issues.
All right, we'll see if that happens, and we'll see if you get back to Congress. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks, Chuck.
It's always a pleasure having you. And Candice Miller, she's running in the 10th Congressional District, Republican, and this is Democracy 2014.